What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Primetime Sports Podcast, hosted by Joey McLary. So in this episode, I'm going to give a breakdown of my next 4 mock drafts. 3 of them are from last week, and then I did another one today. So I'll break down mocks 7.0, 7.1, and 7.2. All 3 of those are from last week. And then I also did another one today, and that will be mock 8.0, which I'll do at the end. So let's start off with mock 7.0. I wanted to be a little bit different with this one than my past ones. So the first overall pick stayed the same. I had Caleb Williams going number 1 to the Bears. And then number 2, I had Jaden Daniels, quarterback out of LSU, going to Washington. I'm still not 100% sure what Washington's going to do. They could take May, they could take Daniels, they could take McCarthy. Nobody really knows what they're going to do with that pick. But when I did that mock draft, I was leaning towards Jaden Daniels being the guy for them there. Then at number 3, this is an interesting pick because this is the first time I have had this guy go above 5 in a mock draft, and that's J.J. McCarthy. I have him going 3rd overall to the Patriots. I was never that high on J.J. McCarthy during the season, and I'll talk a little bit more about him probably in my next episode. But I do know he's been rising up draft boards, even though I don't really technically see him as a top 5, top 10, top 15 pick. I don't really see that when I watch him play. He is probably going to go within those picks regardless. So I'm doing a lot of these mock drafts based on where I think guys will go, not based on where I would take these guys. So I have J.J. McCarthy going number 3 to the Patriots. Then at number 4, I have the Cardinals staying still, and I don't have them taking Marvin Harrison Jr. like I have in most mock drafts. In this one, I had Malik Nabers going 4th overall, wide receiver out of LSU. Then at number 5, I have the Broncos trading up with the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Broncos would take Drake May with the 5th overall pick. I know they just added Zach Wilson in a trade, but I do think they'll be aggressive to go out and get a rookie quarterback in this year's draft. Besides Zach Wilson, they have Ben DiNucci and then Jarrett Stidham in their quarterback room, so I do think they're looking to add and maybe get a guy that they can build around for the future. I am higher on Zach Wilson than most, but I think they really just made that trade just as an insurance policy. Maybe Wilson can start the season before the Broncos hand over the reins to a guy like, let's say, Drake May. So I have May going 5th overall. Then at 6th overall, I have the Giants taking Marvin Harrison Jr. out of Ohio State. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be a good receiver in the NFL. I don't know if he's going to be generational and a Hall of Fame receiver like a lot of people see. It's really hard to make that prediction right now. I know the hot take is probably saying he's going to be good, not great. Most people are saying he's generational and one of the best wide receiver prospects I've ever seen. I think he'll be good. I'm not going to say the best receiver in the game like a lot of people are, but I do have the Giants taking him at 6th overall. I'm more interested in adding to that offense and getting help for Daniel Jones, whether it's adding a right tackle like Joe Alt or getting a guy like Malik Nabers or potentially Marvin Harrison Jr. or Rome Odunze. I think that would be the best idea. I do think it's really a lot of smoke screens going on right now with the Giants, with a lot of the reports saying the Giants want to trade up to get a quarterback. I think that's a smokescreen. I think the Giants are just really using that as a tactic. So teams behind them like Minnesota and the Denver Broncos and the Las Vegas Raiders will trade up for the 4th or the 5th overall picks with the Cardinals or the Chargers, jump the Giants, take a quarterback, and then the Giants have a potential chance of getting whatever wide receiver they want with the 6th overall pick. So now moving on to the number 7 overall pick. I have the Titans taking Olu Fashanu, a tackle out of Penn State. I do think a tackle is a big need for them, considering they haven't really had a great offensive line the last couple of years. They've battled a lot of injuries on the line. So I do think it's time for them to add a potential franchise left tackle, and I think Fashanu could be the answer for them there. At number 8, Rome Odunze, wide receiver out of Washington. I have him going to the Atlanta Falcons here. I think he has the chance of being the best receiver in this year's draft. I was a big fan of him at Washington. I'm still a big fan of him now. I think if you look at that Atlanta offense, you have Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, and if you can add another receiver like Rome Odunze and give Kirk Cousins even more help, I think that would be the best idea. Then with the 9th overall pick, I have Joe Alt, tackle out of Notre Dame, going to the Bears. Their offensive line has been a real problem for them over the last couple of years, so I do think giving Caleb Williams some time to throw the ball would be beneficial, so adding a tackle there at 9 would be great. And I think Alt is the best offensive tackle in this year's draft, so getting him at 9th overall is a great value. Then at 10th overall, I have the Jets trading down here. I have the Raiders trading up from 13 to 10, and I have the Raiders taking Michael Penix Jr., quarterback out of Washington. Michael Penix, I think, is the most underestimated, the most underappreciated, the most underrated quarterback in this year's draft. I think if you look at his injuries over his career, yes, they are concerning, all the injuries he's had, but you also see a guy that's played through all of those injuries, has come back from all those injuries. He's very resilient, led a team to the national championship this year, which honestly wasn't the best game for him. I know he struggled in that game, but that was against a very good Michigan defense who stifled a lot of quarterbacks this season. So Penix did struggle in that game. I know that, but I think he's a very good quarterback. I think he's the best quarterback in this year's draft. I know it's a hot take. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but at the end of the day, we're all going to have our opinions, and that's the beauty of sports podcasting, like I've said before, and that's the beauty of the NFL draft. Everyone's going to see quarterback prospects and prospects in general, no matter the position. Everyone's going to see them differently and grade guys differently. I think Penix can be the best quarterback in this year's draft. I think he is the best quarterback in this year's draft, and I really liked the statement that he put out in the Players Tribune yesterday. And here's the quote. I'm going to read it out to you. I hear it all the time. He's been injured. What happens if he gets injured again? Haven't I shown what that looks like? Haven't I put out almost 2,000 plays on tape since my last injury? And since my fourth season-ending injury in 4 years, that's constantly mentioned whenever my name is brought up? Truth is, I'd be more worried if I had never been injured. We don't all come back the same. I can't speak for those that have never gone through anything, but I can speak on me. I've seen how deep my foundation is. I know the storms I'm prepared to weather. For most people, that'd be the end of their story. But there's more to my story, and I own every page of it. This isn't a solo journey for me. There's been plenty of other guys who are cut from the same fabric, who experienced the same challenges, and displayed the same resilience. Guys you would have lost money on if you bet against them. Guys like Thomas Davis, who went on to make 3 Pro Bowls after tearing the same ACL 3 times. Guys like Frank Gore, who had a 16-year Hall of Fame level career at running back after tearing his ACL twice in college. So I have no problem taking all the MRIs and x-rays you ask of me. Truth is, it's an EKG that will tell you everything you need to know about me. And that's the end of his statement there. But what a very powerful quote there from Michael Penix Jr. I don't think he could have said that any more perfect. That was just absolutely spot on and brilliant writing from him there. He really shoves it at the people that say he's been injured so much and that's a reason not to take him and he's 24 years old. Yeah, those are all concerns at the end of the day, but every single quarterback, every single prospect in this year's draft, and every single draft, honestly, in general, besides this year, every single prospect has a plus and a negative to them. Whether it's injuries, whether it's blocking, whether it's speed, whether it's size, every single prospect has some type of concern or weakness to their game. And that's the beauty of the NFL draft. That's the beauty of every draft in every sport. Nobody knows how prospects are going to pan out. There's never a can't-miss prospect. I know that's a phrase that's thrown out there a lot, generational prospect, can't-miss prospect, but at the end of the day, nobody is a generational talent in the NFL until they step foot on that field. They have to step foot on that field to show that their game translates from college to the NFL. And like I said, I think the can't-miss prospect phrase is just thrown out there way too much. Because we always look back at Peyton Manning and John Elway and say that they were can't-miss prospects. And at the end of the day, yeah, when you're looking back at their career, they really were can't-miss prospects. They were. Because they panned out and are Hall of Fame quarterbacks. But at the end of the day, nobody's a Hall of Fame quarterback until you play the games and play all those seasons in the NFL. So nobody really knows who's going to be a can't-miss prospect and who's not going to be. We look back in hindsight and say all of these guys were can't-miss prospects. But at the end of the day, you still have to play these games and you still have to step foot on the NFL fields and make a statement. And build a career and build a legacy in order to be that good, to be considered a can't-miss prospect. So a lot of these picks that I have here and a lot of my predictions, some of them will be right, some of them will be wrong. That's just part of the game. That's the beauty of the NFL draft. But as for Michael Penix Jr., I think the best part of his quote there was the last line. Truth is, it's an EKG that will tell you everything you need to know about me. He has more heart, more grit, and more toughness than any other player in this year's draft. He's resilient, has come back from injuries, and has battled against all of those claims against him, whether it's the injury claim or his too old claim. He has the best arm in this year's draft. Regardless of age, regardless of injuries, he has the best arm in this year's draft. I think he's the best pure passer of any of these quarterbacks. And he's also shown that he won't let any setbacks stop him from his journey in getting to where he wants to get to. We saw him take a team to the national championship this last year for Washington. I became a fan of Penix in 2022. I remember my friend Dylan mentioned him to me my senior year at BC, and he said, hey, you should check out this kid Penix on Washington. He's the real deal. And ever since the first game I watched of his, maybe October of 2022, right away I could tell this kid is going to be an NFL quarterback. And he's pro-ready. He was pro-ready last year. He decided to go back to Washington. He's pro-ready right now as well. So I do like this pick here for Vegas trading up and getting him. I think Vegas is going to be very aggressive to go out and get a quarterback, and I think Penix ends up being the guy for them. I think I have Penix going to the Raiders in 3 of these 4 mock drafts that I'm going to break down in this episode. So there you have it. 10th overall pick. I have the Raiders trading up and getting Michael Penix. Then with the 11th overall pick, I have Dallas Turner, an edge rusher from Alabama, going to the Vikings. In this mock draft here, they would miss out on all of those top quarterbacks, whether it's Williams, Daniels, McCarthy, May, or Penix. But I do have them going out and getting Bo Nix at the end of the first round. You'll hear that proposal there at the end of this mock. So 11th overall, as I said, Dallas Turner, edge rusher from Alabama going to Minnesota. They do need help on that defensive line. They did just lose Danielle Hunter, so maybe Turner could be a difference maker for them on the defensive line. Then with the 12th overall pick, we have the Chargers taking Terrion Arnold, a cornerback out of Alabama. Cornerback is a need for this team. I know the popular pick for them is taking a wide receiver, but maybe they try to trade down and grab some assets for the future. I know tackle is still a need as well, but I think cornerback could be a solid pick here. I'm very high on Terrion Arnold. I think he would be a great pick there for the Chargers. Then with the 13th overall pick, we have the New York Jets taking Brock Bowers, a tight end out of Georgia. With the 14th overall pick, we have the Saints taking Talizi Fuaga, a tackle out of Oregon State. They do need to fix that offensive line. It's a major worry for them, especially with a lot of their guys getting old over the last few years. Offensive line, defensive line, two needs for this team. I have them grabbing a tackle, though, here with the 14th overall pick. Then with the 15th overall pick, I have wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU going to the Colts. I think they stay put here in this mock draft here. I think there's a chance maybe they go up and try to trade for a guy. If, let's say, a guy like Rome Odunze falls a little more, maybe they go up and try to get him. But I think Brian Thomas Jr. could be a good addition to their offense, so I have them taking him there at 15. Then at 16th, I have Jared Verse, an edge rusher out of Florida State, going to the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks were great for so long with their Legion of Boom era because obviously they had a great secondary, but they also had a great pass rush. And I feel like that's something that they should target here in this year's draft. So I have them taking Jared Verse, an edge rusher out of Florida State, at 16. Then at 17, I have Quinyon Mitchell, a cornerback out of Toledo, going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Cornerback is definitely a need for them in their secondary. They could add to their offensive line maybe, or even add a receiver. But in this mock draft, I had Quinyon Mitchell falling to 17, and that would be a great value pick for Jacksonville. Then at 18, we have Troy Fatanu, a tackle out of Washington, going 18th overall to the Cincinnati Bengals. They need help on that offensive line. They need to protect Joe Burrow. That's a main worry for them. Maybe even adding another receiver if they were to go out and get rid of T. Higgins. But in this mock draft here, I have them addressing the offensive line and adding a guy in Fatanu who has really flown up draft boards over the last couple months. Then at 19th overall, I have the LA Rams taking Byron Murphy II, a defensive tackle out of Texas. He can be a game changer for them on the defensive line. Considering Aaron Donald just retired, they're going to be looking to try to fill that spot that he left. I think Byron Murphy II would be a great add for them. Then with the 20th overall pick, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers taking J.C. Latham, a tackle out of Alabama. That's a guy that I'm not as high on as most people are. I'm going to talk about him probably in my next episode. I'm going to give a breakdown of my whole big board of the top 32 prospects in the draft in my eyes. And then I'll also break down my positional rankings. So I'll break down my top quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, cornerbacks, and then maybe break down some underrated and overrated players as well. Latham's a guy that will probably still go very high in this year's draft, but I'm not as high on him as most people are. I do think there are concerns there considering he only played right tackle at Alabama. And in their game against Michigan, he really struggled, it looked like, with his footwork. So that's definitely a worry for me. But I do know he's probably going to still go first round no matter what. He's obviously a big prospect, a big guy, a bulldozing prospect. Kind of like Evan Neal gives me a little bit of flashbacks of him, a guy that coming out of Alabama was very good at Bama. Everyone projected him to be a can't-miss prospect on the offensive line. And then obviously Evan Neal has shown a lot of struggles over his first 2 years in the NFL. Regardless, I think Latham probably still goes top 20, top 25. And here, with the Steelers needing help on the offensive line, I have them taking him 20th overall. Then at 21st overall, we have Dallas trading up with the Miami Dolphins. Dallas will be trading up from 24 in this situation up to 21. And I have Dallas taking Amarius Mims, an offensive tackle out of Georgia. Once again, just like Latham, a very big prospect. But this guy also has concerns as well. That's definitely a worry for a lot of teams, whether or not they want to draft him as high as most. Some teams rank him very high, and then other teams are a little bit weaker on him from what I've read. But at the end of the day, I still think he probably goes somewhere in the middle of the first, and if not first, early second round. In this mock here, I have Dallas trading up and getting him with the 21st overall pick. They need help on their offensive line. Guys are aging. They did lose Tyron Smith in free agency, so I have them taking him with the 21st overall pick. Obviously, there are concerns there, but at the end of the day, the ceiling is very high with him, which I'll talk about that in my positional episode probably tomorrow or maybe tonight if I do a big board episode. But it's definitely a concern. He only started in 8 games in his career at Georgia. That is definitely a worry. But we'll see what he does in the NFL. Regardless, in this mock draft, I have Dallas trading up and getting him. Then with the 22nd overall pick, I have the Eagles addressing their secondary, which is a weakness for them. And I have them taking Nate Wiggins, a cornerback out of Clemson. I think Wiggins is a good prospect. I do think he's getting overrated, though. Obviously, blazing speed, which definitely helps him in the draft. I know a lot of teams probably value that heavily for a corner, especially in today's day where there's a lot of home run hitting wide receivers in the NFL, like Tyreek Hill, like Jalen Waddle, guys that can beat you with speed. So having Wiggins out there definitely helps, especially speed-wise. But I do think he has to get a little more physical, has to add some muscle, which I know that's a common phrase used for prospects in every single sport. They have to put on more muscle, but I do think that has to happen with him if he wants to be an outside corner in the NFL. Regardless, I have the Eagles taking him 22nd overall. Then at 23rd overall, I have Tampa Bay trading up with the Minnesota Vikings, and I have them taking Laiatu Latu, an edge rusher out of UCLA. Tampa Bay could use help on their defensive line. They lost a lot of guys on their defense in this offseason, including Devin White. So they're probably looking to try to add to their defense. And I think Laiatu Latu would definitely be a good force there on the defensive line for them. Then at 24th, we obviously had Miami trading down from 21 to 24 with Dallas. So Miami owns this pick now in this mock. And I have Miami taking Johnny Newton, a defensive tackle out of Illinois. Defensive line is definitely a need for them, considering they just lost Christian Wilkins. They lost a lot of their defense overall, especially in their secondary. Losing Xavier Howard is definitely a loss. Then obviously losing Van Ginkel and Baker. They need help at the linebacker position as well. So I think they'll add to their defense with this pick, and I have them adding Johnny Newton here. Obviously, offensive line is concerned as well. We'll see what they do there. With the 25th overall pick, we have Tyler Guyton, a tackle out of Oklahoma, going to Green Bay. They're looking to try to shore up their offensive line for years to come, considering they just got rid of David Bakhtiari in the offseason. They're looking for a bookend tackle for the next decade who could take his place, and Tyler Guyton is an intriguing prospect who I think could step in and make a difference on their offensive line right away. I know he only started, I think it was 16 games in his college career, so that is definitely a worry. He doesn't have the experience that some other guys do, but he's a huge prospect, 6'7", 322 pounds, only 21 years old, didn't allow a sack in 2023. It definitely has the body control and the size to be a great tackle in the NFL. So I like him going to the Packers with this pick. Next up, we have Minnesota picking because they made a trade with the Tampa Bay Bucks. The Bucks would be trading up from 26 to 23 to take Laiatu Latu. And then Minnesota would be trading down from 23 to 26. And I have them taking Bo Nix, quarterback out of Oregon, with this selection. Bo Nix is a guy I'm not as high on as most. His numbers were great at Oregon, put up great numbers the last couple of years. I even was a fan of him watching his games at Oregon. But I don't think his game is going to translate well to the NFL. But obviously Minnesota's looking to find a quarterback for the future. They do have Sam Darnold. Maybe they give him a chance to start this year. But I think they try to go out and get a quarterback at some point. And I have Bo Nix being that guy in this mock. Then at 27th, we have Arizona taking TJ Tampa, a cornerback out of Iowa State. A guy that I'm very high on. I think he's very underrated. And this secondary does need help. Going out and getting a guy like TJ Tampa who plays aggressively, has good size and length for a cornerback. That's definitely necessary in today's day in the NFL. I know a lot of mock drafts have him going around second round, but I do have a first round grade on him, so regardless of where he goes, I do think he has first round talent. One issue for him is definitely trying to wrap up when he's tackling. He did miss some tackles this past season, but that's something he'll learn in the NFL. You can't just hit guys high like you can in college. You have to wrap them up in the NFL. That's something he's going to have to do, obviously, better at. Then at 28th, I have the Buffalo Bills taking Keon Coleman, a wide receiver out of Florida State, a guy that I'm very high on. I think he's underrated considering I think he has the potential skill set and the ability to be a top 10, top 15 pick. He's going to fall in the first round, most likely. So if he falls to 27, 28, 29, that's going to be a steal for whoever gets him. I think the Bills do need to add to their wide receiver room. They lost Gabe Davis in the offseason to free agency, and then they obviously traded Stephon Diggs as well. So right now, I think Curtis Samuel is their number one wide receiver, which they're going to try to go and add a receiver at some point. This is a loaded wide receiver class. If they go out and get Keon Coleman at the end of the first round, I think Bills fans would be very happy with that pick. He's an exciting player to watch. Then with the 29th overall pick, we have Chop Robinson, an edge rusher out of Penn State, going to the Detroit Lions. We know Dan Campbell loves a hard-nosed defense who plays hard and has a motor that doesn't quit. That's a guy like Chop Robinson who uses speed and power to get by people. He could still probably add on a little more muscle. He's 6'3", 254 pounds. I think he could probably add on maybe a few more pounds of muscle, but at the end of the day, had a very good season this past year, 4 sacks in 10 games with 2 forced fumbles and a fumble recovery. One thing I saw is that he has to do better with balance. He easily gets knocked off of his feet sometimes and gets thrown out of the play. So maybe adding a little more muscle could help. But he is fast, 4.48 40-yard dash. So adding him to a defensive line that already has talent like Aiden Hutchinson would be strong there in Detroit. Then with the 30th overall pick, we have Xavier Legette, a wide receiver out of South Carolina going to the Ravens. I think wide receiver is a need for them. I know they just extended Rashad Bateman today. I know they took Zay Flowers in the first round last year, but Lamar Jackson could still use more help at wide receiver. So I think going out and getting a game-changing wide receiver like Leggett could be smart. He could still probably go even second round. First round isn't a guarantee for him, but if you get him late in the first, I think that's a good idea there for the Ravens. Then with the 31st overall pick, I have the Niners addressing their offensive line, which is definitely a worry for them. Their offensive line wasn't great this past season. They have some good players on the offensive line, like Trent Williams, but there are definitely some holes as well. I have them taking Graham Barton, a center out of Duke, in this mock draft. And then with the 32nd overall pick, I have Kansas City adding to their offensive line, and I have them taking Cooper Beebe, an offensive guard out of Kansas State. Offensive line is definitely a need for them. It seems like every year their offensive line is just really switching and changing, whether they're cutting guys, trading guys, letting guys go in free agency. It seems like every single year they're mixing up their offensive line. But when you have Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, he finds a way to make anything work. But I think adding a guy like Cooper Beebe, who is a versatile offensive guard, a guy that had a lot of success in college, could make a lot of sense for them with the 32nd overall pick. He played in a lot of positions in college, played some time at left tackle, played some left guard, and right tackle. So very versatile. He can play everywhere in the offensive line. I think he probably projects more as an offensive guard in the NFL. And no matter what position he plays in the offensive line, there's a team that's going to find a need for him, whether it's at guard or tackle. Probably is more of a guard, I would say, at 6'3", 322 pounds. We'll see what NFL teams project him to be, but he was a very successful offensive lineman in college, one of the best in the country for a reason. I think going to the Kansas City Chiefs would be a good landing spot for him. So there you have it. There was Mock 7.0, which I made last week. I think it was a week ago from today. And now I'm going to give you my Mock 7.1, which I made just a few hours after that. And I mixed up a couple things, but I'm not going to go down every single player and give you a breakdown of each player like I just did. Unless it's a new player or a new landing spot that I liked that I want to break down, I will. But for the most part, this will just be naming where I have guys going. So with the first overall pick, we have Caleb Williams going to the Bears. The second overall pick, Drake May going to the Washington Commanders. I think it's a complete toss-up who they're going to take. It could be May, it could be McCarthy, it could be Daniels. I wouldn't be surprised if any of those three guys go there at 2. I know in years past we get surprised when teams take a guy when we don't really expect them to, but I think all three of those guys have an equal chance to be the second overall pick right now. Then with the third overall pick, we have Jaden Daniels going to the Patriots. Their offensive line is definitely a worry. It wasn't great last season. Mac Jones didn't really have much to work with at the receiver position either. So I don't think any quarterback that steps in this system is going to succeed right away. They definitely need some more help on the supporting cast. But I do think a guy like Jaden Daniels, who can move, has mobility, obviously can run the ball as well, being a dual threat quarterback, could definitely help a team that struggles on the offensive line. We saw Russell Wilson take a really struggling offensive line for all of his years in Seattle and make production out of it. I think the same could go for Daniels here. A very mobile quarterback, a good runner as well. Maybe has to avoid contact a little bit more in the NFL than he did in college. Obviously ran a lot in the open field in college. You probably won't be able to do that as much in the NFL. But I do think with his speed, he could make that offensive line a little bit more serviceable. So I think he'd be a good pick there for the Patriots at 3. Then at number 4, we have the Cardinals taking Marvin Harrison Jr., who honestly, I've been debating whether or not they're going to take Nabers or Harrison a lot. In this mock, I have them taking Harrison. Then at number 5, we have the Chargers staying put in this mock draft, and I have them taking Malik Nabers, a wide receiver out of LSU. Regardless of what the Chargers do here, they do have some holes they have to figure out, whether it's at the tackle position, whether it's at wide receiver, whether it's in a trade down and getting a cornerback like I had in my mock 7.0. In this mock here, I have them taking Malik Nabers, which I know my buddy ClipCase74 on YouTube would be a very big fan of that pick. He's a blazing wide receiver who can definitely make a difference on that offense and give Justin Herbert some help. I think he'd be a great pick for them there at number 5. Then at number 6, we have the Giants trading down with the Vikings. We have the Vikings trading up from 11 to 6 here, and I have them taking J.J. McCarthy, a quarterback out of Michigan. I don't think it's any question whether or not the Vikings want to get a quarterback. I think everybody knows they're going to take a quarterback at some point in this year's draft. I have them being aggressive in this mock draft and trading up with the Giants. I think the Giants wanting to draft a quarterback is really just a smokescreen right now, just to get teams behind them to trade up for a quarterback, whether it's for the 3rd overall pick, 4th overall pick, or 5th overall pick. I think it's all smokescreens for teams to jump the Giants, so the Giants have a better chance at getting a wide receiver that they want. So in this mock draft, I have the Giants trading down from 6 to 11. I have the Vikings getting their quarterback for the future in J.J. McCarthy. We'll see how he pans out. I think the Vikings are the best landing spot for him. You have a great coach in Kevin O'Connell. You have a great wide receiver in Justin Jefferson. Having that mix right there can definitely help out a quarterback like McCarthy. If you look at a guy like Mac Jones, he went to a Patriots team that didn't really have many weapons or much to work with. J.J. McCarthy, not really the same quarterback. I'm not really saying him and Mac are the same. But if McCarthy goes to a bad landing spot, let's say like New England, which New England needs to get more weapons, no matter who their quarterback is, they need to add a big-time receiver at some point. I think McCarthy could have similar struggles to Mac Jones if he were in New England. But if McCarthy goes to a team like Minnesota, I think that would be a great landing spot for him. So I have them trading up and getting him at 6 overall. Obviously, where you get drafted is definitely a big part of a quarterback's success. I know it's not talked about a lot, but if you look at guys like Zach Wilson, who had a lot of talent coming out of college, went to the Jets where the offensive line wasn't great. The weapons were okay. Garrett Wilson is a very talented receiver, but at the end of the day, it's not like Zach Wilson had a lot to work with in that Jets offense and obviously had a fan base that was against him. I'm not saying every quarterback's going to have a perfect situation. That's not really the case. Not everybody inherits the situation that Brock Purdy got, where it's a good offensive line that's at least serviceable, elite weapons, and a very good defense, and obviously a very good head coach with a very quarterback-friendly system. Not every single quarterback is going to step into that situation. I understand that. Quarterbacks have to elevate the guys around them, but I do think where you land is a major factor of how you're going to fit in the NFL and how much success you're going to have. Then at number 7 overall, we have the Tennessee Titans taking Joe Alt, a tackle out of Notre Dame. So my last mock draft, I had them taking Olu Fashanu, and this one I have them taking Joe Alt. Then at 8 overall, we have the Atlanta Falcons taking Terrion Arnold, a cornerback out of Alabama. In my mock draft, 7.0, I had them taking Rome Odunze. But in this mock here, I have them adding another cornerback. They obviously have a very good cornerback in A.J. Terrell, have a very good safety in Jesse Bates. I think adding Terrion Arnold can make that secondary even better, especially considering today's NFL, every single team has at least a wide receiver 1 for the most part, and some good wide receiver 2s and wide receiver 3s. Adding to the secondary is never a bad idea. You can never have too many good cornerbacks, and I think adding Arnold, who I think is the most safe cornerback prospect in this year's draft, could be smart for Atlanta. Then at number 9, I have Chicago taking Dallas Turner, an edge rusher out of Alabama. I know it's a popular pick. A lot of people have them taking an edge rusher with that 9th overall pick. I do think there's a chance they try to go and add another receiver to try to help Caleb Williams, but I do think their pass rush could definitely use some help. So I think adding Dallas Turner could be a force on their defensive line. Then at number 10, I have the Jets taking Olu Fashanu, a tackle out of Penn State. They're in a prime position to add another weapon if they want to for Aaron Rodgers, but they also can add to their offensive line. They did make some changes to their offensive line this offseason, getting Morgan Moses and then getting Tyron Smith. But both of those guys are getting up there in age, and there are injury concerns, especially with Tyron Smith. Morgan Moses has been healthy for the most part, but Tyron Smith, there are definitely injury concerns with him staying on the field. So I think adding another tackle to give Aaron Rodgers some time to throw would be the best idea for them. Then with the 11th overall pick, I have the Raiders trading up with the New York Giants here. So I had the Giants trading from 6 to 11. I had them trading down with Minnesota. And now I have the Giants trading down yet again. And I have them trading down from 11 to 13. And I have the Raiders trading up yet again. I think the Raiders are going to be very aggressive to try to go out and find their franchise quarterback. I think they're going to try to jump the Denver Broncos, who are in the market for a quarterback as well. I have the Raiders jumping to 11 to take Michael Penix Jr., quarterback out of Washington. Then at 12th overall, with Denver missing out on Penix, I have them taking cornerback Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo, a very good defensive back, a guy that I'm very high on. I'll talk about him probably more in my Big Board episode, but I do think he could be a gem for any team that needs a cornerback in the first round. Then with the 13th overall pick, I have the Giants taking Rome Odunze out of Washington. That would be pretty late for him. I don't think he's going to fall to 13, but in this mock here, I want to be a little bit creative and be a little bit different than my other one, so I had him falling to 13 here to the Giants. Then at 14th, I had the Saints taking another tackle, but this time a different one than my mock 7.0, and I have them taking Troy Fautanu, a tackle out of Washington, who had a very good year for Washington, was a big part of their offense having so much success. Obviously, Michael Penix being great, and Jalen Polk, and obviously having a guy like Rome Odunze. All of that definitely helped that offense be successful, but having a very good offensive line was definitely huge for them in the trenches, and Fautanu had a very good season. He's a guy that could definitely make a difference on the Saints' offensive line. Then with the 15th overall pick, I have Brock Bowers going to the Indianapolis Colts. I think the Colts could go in multiple ways with this pick. They could go and add a wide receiver. They could add to their secondary and get a cornerback. They could add to their defensive line. In this mock right here, I have them taking Brock Bowers and adding another weapon to their offense. With Anthony Richardson coming back healthy this season, they're going to probably be looking to add some talent around him, especially in the receiving part of the game. He needs more help. Obviously, more guys to throw to than just Michael Pittman Jr. So I think adding a guy like Brock Bowers could be the move for them. I'm not really as high, though, in the tight end position as most. I know Brock Bowers is the best tight end prospect in this draft, but I don't really value the tight end position enough to take a guy, let's say, top 8 or top 10. So I have him falling to 15th here to the Colts. Then at number 16, I have the Seattle Seahawks taking Byron Murphy II, a defensive tackle out of Texas. He's going to be a force on the defensive line, no matter where he is in the NFL. But if you look at Seattle's defensive line, they have Jaron Reed and Leonard Williams, 2 good players right there, but they are still missing another piece on that defensive line. So I think Byron Murphy II could step into that defense and be a major difference maker and a major disruptor right away. I like some of the moves Seattle made in the offseason. Going out and getting Rayshawn Jenkins for safety. and then adding Jerome Baker to their linebacking room, and then also Tyrell Dodson from Buffalo. Those are some good adds there. I think they could even add a little bit more to that defense, and I think the defensive line is probably the biggest weakness for them in their defensive unit, so I think adding a guy like Murphy could make a lot of sense. Then at number 17, I have Brian Thomas Jr., a wide receiver out of LSU, going to Jacksonville. They could still add another receiver. I know they just added Gabe Davis in the offseason, but they did lose Calvin Ridley. They do have Christian Kirk coming back healthy this season, but I do think adding a big receiver could be huge for this offense, and obviously could be help to Trevor Lawrence. Thomas is 6'3", 209 pounds, and also runs a 4.33 40-yard dash. So great speed, great athleticism, very good acceleration. So that could be a great addition to that offense. I think Trevor Lawrence would be a really big fan of that pick. Then at number 18 overall, I have the Bengals taking another tackle, this time a different one than my last mock draft. In this mock here, 7.1, I have them taking J.C. Latham, a tackle out of Alabama. Then at 19, I have the LA Rams addressing their defensive line, this time with a different player. I have them taking Jared Verse, an edge rusher out of Florida State, who had a lot of success at Florida State. He was projected to be a top 10 pick at one point. And who knows, maybe he still will be, but he has fallen down draft boards just a little bit. He is a very good player, though. He'll still go in the first round no matter where he goes, but probably not top 10 anymore. Has a very good first step. That is definitely a big part of his game. Had a very good season this past year at Florida State. 9 sacks with a fumble recovery and a forced fumble. With 12.5 tackles for a loss. He was very good for them, a big part of their defense. Was actually an FCS transfer at one point from Albany, but made the jump to Florida State, had a very good year for them, could have gotten drafted last year in the first round, went back to Florida State, wanted to contend for a national title. Obviously, things didn't work out. They didn't get a chance to compete in the CFP, unfortunately, but he'll still have a chance at the first round, still probably go somewhere in the middle of the first. In this mock here, I have him going 19th overall to LA. I think that would be a great landing spot for him. I think he's going to be a great player in the NFL. Then at 20th overall, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers taking Talizi Fuaga, a tackle out of Oregon State. Tackle's a major need for this team. They need to add to that offensive line. They did obviously fix the quarterback room, getting rid of Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky, adding in Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. Neither guy really took too much to go out and get, so it was smart for them to add to their quarterback room. Now it's time to add to their offensive line. So I have them adding Fuaga, a tackle out of Oregon State. Then at 21, I have the Dolphins adding to their defensive line, and I have them taking Laiatu Latu, an edge rusher out of UCLA. They definitely need help on that defensive line. They did lose a lot of pieces to their defense. Would not be surprised if they took an edge rusher here, a defensive tackle, or a cornerback. Offensive line's in need as well. But I do think if Laiatu Latu falls all the way that far to 21, that would be a steal of a pick. Then at 22, I have the Philadelphia Eagles taking Chop Robinson, an edge rusher out of Penn State. That defense is already good. They already have a lot of talent, especially on their defensive line. Grabbing a guy last year in Jalen Carter was an absolute steal. In this year's draft, I have them taking a guy that fell pretty far in this mock draft here, and that is Chop Robinson, an edge rusher out of Penn State. He has the talent to probably even go top 15, but in this mock, I have him falling to 22. And obviously that defensive line could use some help considering Fletcher Cox is retired now, and Brandon Graham is getting up there in age. I do expect the Eagles to go out and add to their defense, though, with their first-round pick. Then at number 23, I have the Minnesota Vikings trading down from this pick. I have the Houston Texans jumping up from their second-round pick. They don't have a first-round pick in this year's draft. I have them jumping up from, I think it was 42 up to 23, and I have them adding to their defensive line, getting Johnny Newton, a defensive tackle out of Illinois, who could probably go a lot higher than 23, but in this mock he fell for some reason. So I have the Texans trading up and adding to their defensive line. They already added Danielle Hunter in the offseason. Adding in a guy like Johnny Newton could make that defensive line even stronger, so trading into the first round is still definitely a possibility for them, and we've seen them already make big moves this offseason, trading for Joe Mixon, trading for Stephon Diggs. They're not afraid of going out and making a big move. Then with the 24th overall pick, we have the Cowboys taking Jackson Powers-Johnson, a center out of Oregon. Center's a need for them. I wouldn't be surprised if they go and add one in the draft. Powers-Johnson is a guy that can play multiple positions on the offensive line, has a very good first step, very good power, and very physical in the interior of the offensive line. Would not be surprised if Dallas goes out and gets him. That would be a great pick for them at number 24. Then at number 25, I have the Green Bay Packers taking Cooper DeJean, a defensive back out of Iowa. Not really too sure if an NFL team is going to draft him to be a safety or a corner. I think each team probably has their own idea of what they think he's going to fit into in their defense. I think he's probably more of a safety in the NFL, but that's just my opinion. And in this mock draft, I have Green Bay adding him to their secondary, which is still a need for them. Then at number 26, I have the Tampa Bay Bucks taking A.D. Mitchell, a wide receiver out of Texas, who is just as talented as any other receiver in this year's draft. Definitely has a high ceiling. The issue is there were some character issues that I was reading about online. Not really too sure if they're true or not. You can't really trust everything you read, especially this time of year right before the draft. There's a lot of smoke screens and a lot of rumors going around that aren't true. But at the same time, the Tampa Bay Bucks do have only one more year left on their deal with Chris Godwin. Then I think they probably go out and add a receiver, whether it's in this year's draft or next year's draft, to pair up with Mike Evans, who they did just pay a big amount of money to this offseason. I think go out and getting A.D. Mitchell could definitely make sense, considering Chris Godwin is probably not on the Bucks this time next year. Mitchell had a lot of success in college, 2 very good seasons at Georgia, and then a very good season at Texas. Had a chance to win the CFP in all 3 years of college, which is very crazy. Obviously, had some good teams that he was playing with. 2 years he won with Georgia, and then this past year had a chance with Texas. Ended up falling short, but the talent is there to be a playmaker in the NFL. 11 touchdowns this past season for Texas. A negative for him is blocking. He's not really a good blocker at all, and in today's day in the NFL, you need to block as a wide receiver. A positive to his game, though, is his speed. 4.34 40-yard dash. A good physical receiver who can go up and get it, and a very underrated route runner as well. So I think he'd be a good pick there for the Bucks. Then at number 27 overall, we have Detroit trading up from 29. So we have the Cardinals trading down from 27. They'll go down to 29. And we have the Lions trading up from 29 to 27 to jump the Buffalo Bills and take a cornerback. I have the Lions taking Nate Wiggins here, a cornerback out of Clemson. Secondary is definitely a need for them. They did lose a safety in C.J. Gardner-Johnson in free agency, so they probably look to add a safety in this year's draft at some point. But cornerback is still a need as well. I think adding a CB2 could be the best idea for them. So in this mock draft here, I have them trading up and getting Nate Wiggins, a guy that I'm not as high on as most, but obviously his speed is going to be a major factor in why he's drafted as high as he is. So I have the Lions going out and grabbing him at 27. Then at 28, I have the Buffalo Bills taking Xavier Legette, a wide receiver out of South Carolina. I have them addressing their wide receiver need here in the first round yet again. Then at number 29, we had Arizona trading down from 27 to 29. So with this pick, I have the Cardinals taking TJ Tampa, a cornerback out of Iowa State. Cornerback is a need for them. I think TJ Tampa is a very underrated prospect. So I think Arizona adding him would be a great addition. Then at 30th, I have the Baltimore Ravens taking Cooper Beebe, a guard out of Kansas State who is very versatile, can play multiple positions on the offensive line, which is definitely a need for the Ravens. They did lose some pieces to their offensive line in the offseason, like Kevin Zeitler. So adding Beebe, a guy that's very versatile, had a lot of success in college, would be a great pick for them there, especially the value-wise at number 30. Then at number 31, I have the Carolina Panthers trading up with the San Francisco 49ers. I have the Panthers jumping from 33 to 31, and I have them taking Keon Coleman, a wide receiver out of Florida State, a guy that I'm very high on. I think it's time for them to add more help around Bryce Young. They added to the offensive line in free agency. Now it's time to go and add a big-time receiver who can be a big-time player for them, and I think Keon Coleman would be a great addition for them. And then if you also trade back in and get him in the first round, you have a fifth-year option potential for him. So that's why the Ravens traded up to get Lamar Jackson at number 32 in the 2019 NFL Draft, because they wanted the fifth-year option on Lamar Jackson. So that's why they traded up in the 2018 NFL Draft to get Lamar at 32. And I think the same is going to go here. I think the Carolina Panthers are going to trade up from 33 to 31, and I think they're going to take Keon Coleman, a wide receiver out of Florida State. Bryce Young needs more help. I would be a big fan of this move with him being a Panther. And then at number 32 to round out the 7.1 mock draft, I have Tyler Guyton, a tackle out of Oklahoma, going to the Chiefs. Offensive line is still a need for them. Like I said, it seems like every year they're mixing it up, and they're always finding ways to make it work. Maybe adding a tackle that could potentially be an answer for them for more than just one season, let's say 4 or 5, 6 years, could be the best move for them. So I have them adding Guyton, a tackle out of Oklahoma. And I know he only made around 15 starts in his college career, if I remember right, but at the end of the day, the Chiefs are in a position where they can take a gamble on a guy and just see if it works out. That's why they could take a gamble on a guy like Jordan Morgan out of Arizona. They could just take the best player available because they're in a position right now to still contend. They don't really have many holes. I know cornerback is probably now somewhat of a need since they just got rid of L'Jarius Sneed. Maybe you could look to see them get a cornerback there at 32 if someone falls, which in one of my next mocks, you'll see in one of the next two that I do have them taking a cornerback. So now I'm going to move on and give you a breakdown of my mock 7.2, which I did. I think it was last Friday, if I remember right. So with the first overall pick, Caleb Williams to the Bears. Nothing changed there. At number 2, I have Drake May going to the Washington Commanders. So for the second mock in a row, I had him going 2 overall. Then at number 3, the same pick that I had in 7.1, Jaden Daniels going to the Patriots with the third overall pick. Then at number 4, Malik Nabers to the Cardinals. So my last couple mocks, I've kind of switched between Nabers and Harrison. I think both these guys are in contention for the 4th overall pick. Then at 5th overall, I have the Chargers staying still and taking Marvin Harrison Jr. which I know a lot of Chargers fans would be happy to see him in a Chargers uniform. Then at number 6, I have the Broncos trading up with the New York Giants and taking J.J. McCarthy with the 6th overall pick. Then at number 7, I have Joe Alt going to the Titans. At number 8, Rome Odunze to the Atlanta Falcons, which I still think they could use more help at receiver. So Kirk Cousins would get another weapon there in Odunze, a guy that I'm very high on, that I think could be the best receiver in this year's draft. At number 9, we have the Bears taking Dallas Turner, an edge rusher out of Alabama. They could definitely add an edge rusher, which I had them do in 7.1 and 7.2 here. I have them taking an edge rusher yet again. Then at number 10, I have the Jets trading down with the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders trading up from 13 to 10 to take Michael Penix Jr. Like I've noted now multiple times, I think the Raiders are going to go out and get a franchise quarterback in this year's draft. Whether or not that player pans out, who knows? They're going to go up and get a quarterback at some point in the top 10, I believe. I think they're going to trade up. And if not, they take somebody at 13 maybe if Penix falls or Bo Nix falls, or maybe McCarthy if he were to fall too, like Will Levis did last year. Then at number 11, Terrion Arnold, cornerback out of Alabama, going to the Minnesota Vikings. Once again, they're getting jumped here. I think if Minnesota doesn't get a quarterback with that 11th pick, they might try to trade up to get their guy. And if they don't, I think the Raiders would be jumping them for the 10th overall pick to get their guy. Then at number 12, I have Olu Fashanu going to the New York Giants. Tackle is definitely a need for the Giants. I think Daniel Jones could still use a little bit more help. Evan Neal obviously hasn't panned out yet. I know he still is only going into his 3rd year, but he has not looked good in his first 2 years with the Giants. Maybe they move him inside to guard, which we should have done with Eric Flowers years ago. Maybe they move Evan Neal inside to guard, and maybe Jeff Fashanu to be the right tackle. Then at number 13, the Jets would be trading down from 10 to 13, so they have the 13th overall pick here. I have them taking Brock Bowers, a tight end out of Georgia, adding more weapons there for Aaron Rodgers, since it's really just a one-and-done type of thing for Rodgers right now. Who knows if he's going to play another season? They only have a guarantee that he's going to play this year. So at the end of the day, they're just going to try to go out and get as many weapons as they can to try to win right now. Bowers would be a win right now ad for them. At number 14, Talizi Fuaga, going to the Saints with the 14th overall pick. So once again, trying to fix their offensive line. At number 15, I have Jared Verse, an edge rusher out of Florida State, going to the Indianapolis Colts. They could use help on their defensive line, so adding an explosive pass rusher like Verse could definitely make a big difference for them. At number 16, I have the Philadelphia Eagles trading up here. I have them jumping from 22 to 16, trading up with the Seattle Seahawks, and I have the Eagles taking Laiatu Latu, an edge rusher out of UCLA. Like I've already noted in this episode, their defensive line could still use another piece or two, so maybe adding Laiatu Latu could be the missing piece for them. At number 17, I have Quinyon Mitchell, a cornerback out of Toledo, going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So just like my mock 7.0, I have the Jaguars taking Mitchell, a guy that I'm very high on. I think he has the highest ceiling among the cornerbacks in this draft, but at the same time, a small school like Toledo, some people might be a little bit nervous drafting a guy out of a small school. I don't see any problem with it. I'm a big fan of the MAC, the Mid-American Conference. They have a lot of gems in there, a lot of good players, a lot of guys that grind and play hard. Quinyon Mitchell is a very good player, a very good prospect, and obviously Jacksonville needs help in that secondary, so it's definitely worth a gamble to take a guy like Mitchell, who has a very high ceiling, in my opinion. At number 18, I have the Bengals taking Brian Thomas Jr., a wide receiver out of LSU. I think the Bengals are hitting a crossroads right now with their wide receiver situation. Obviously, T. Higgins is a wide receiver 2 in that offense. He wants to be a wide receiver 1. He wants to be paid as a wide receiver 1. But at some point, Jamar Chase is going to get that big payday. So they're not really willing to give T. Higgins that money. That's why he was franchise tagged. I think he ends up getting traded at some point. So I have Brian Thomas Jr. being his replacement there in the Bengals offense. Then at number 19, I have Troy Fatanu, offensive tackle from Washington, going to the LA Rams. An interesting pick here, but offensive line is a need for them. At number 20, I have the Steelers taking J.C. Latham, a tackle out of Alabama. So just like I had in my mock 7.0, here in 7.2, I have Latham going to the Steelers. At number 21, I have the Miami Dolphins taking Jackson Powers Johnson, a center out of Oregon, who, like I said, is versatile. He can play multiple positions on the offensive line, but likely will be a center in the NFL. At number 21, I have Bo Nix going to the Seattle Seahawks. I have them trading down from 16 to 22, with the Eagles jumping up to 16 to get Laiatu Latu. At number 22, I have the Seahawks taking a surprise pick here. I have them taking Bo Nix out of Oregon. Maybe he ends up being the project at quarterback that could potentially start for them in a couple years. At number 23, I have the Vikings taking Chop Robinson, an edge rusher out of Penn State. If the Vikings don't get their quarterback in this first round, maybe they wait until the second or the third round to get a guy like potentially Michael Pratt, or maybe get a guy like Spencer Rattler In this situation, they're just adding to their D-line, taking the best player available maybe, and Chop Robinson at 23 could be good value. I know he's been falling in some draft boards, but the talent is there, so I have them going with Chop Robinson with the 23rd overall pick. At number 24, I have the Dallas Cowboys adding to their defensive line, taking Johnny Newton, a defensive tackle out of Illinois. Somehow, someway, he fell to 24 in this pick. That would be great value there for the Cowboys. At 25, I have Tyler Guyton, a tackle out of Oklahoma, going to the Green Bay Packers. The Packers need to shore up that offensive line. Tackle is definitely a need for them, so going out and getting Guyton wouldn't be a bad addition for them. At number 26, I have Darius Robinson, an edge rusher out of Missouri, going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Robinson's coming off a very good season this past year with 8.5 sacks, which led that Missouri defense, a team that was very good this season, 11-2 overall. He was a big part of their defense. It was a big leader for them as well. He's only 22 years old, so even though he was there and he is technically a veteran in that pass rushing group, he's still young, only 22 years old, so there's definitely a lot of room to grow there for him. I believe this is my first mock draft. I have him going in the first round, and if it's not my first, maybe it's my second mock draft with him going in the first round, but he has been flying up draft boards as of late, so I would not be surprised to see him be a first-round pick in tomorrow's draft. If you look at his numbers, he's 6'5", 285 pounds, 14 tackles for a loss this past season, 8.5 sacks, making 12 starts. Has good enough size and quickness to be a very good pass rusher in the NFL, but he does lean on his strength a little bit too much when he's pass rushing, so that could be a weakness in the NFL. If he continues just to use the same move every single time, teams will pick up against that. But at the end of the day, the Bucs do need help on the defensive line. I have them taking Robinson here at number 26. At number 27, I have Nate Wiggins going to the Arizona Cardinals. They're fixing their secondary a little bit. He's a guy that I've already mentioned that I'm not as high on as most, but with his speed, he's probably still going to be a first-round pick no matter what. And then at number 28, I have the Bills adding to their secondary, taking Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. I think he ends up being more of a safety in the NFL than a cornerback. At the end of the day, a lot of people probably value him more as a cornerback than a safety, but I think he's more of a safety in the NFL. The Bills need help at both positions regardless, though. They got rid of Jordan Poyer in the offseason, Tre'Davious White, Micah Hyde's a free agent, so they need help in their secondary. So DeJean could be the guy they go out and add. Like I've already noted, though, I do think he's overrated. I don't really see top 15, top 20 pick talent when I watch him play. Obviously still going to be probably a high pick no matter what, but I do think he's a little bit overrated. I'll get more into that probably when I do my big board, whether it's tonight or tomorrow. Then at number 29, Kool-Aid McKinstry, a cornerback out of Alabama, going to the Detroit Lions. Like I've already noted, they need a little bit in their secondary. Maybe adding Kool-Aid McKinstry would be a solid addition. They drafted Brian Branch last year in the NFL draft. He ended up being a great pickup for them. He's a hustler who can tackle and make plays. Kool-Aid McKinstry is another guy that's very reliable. He's a very experienced cornerback. Could be a good add for them at number 29. Then at number 30, I have Keon Coleman, wide receiver out of Florida State, going to the Ravens. Would not be surprised to see the Ravens go out and add another receiver. Lamar Jackson could definitely use a big-bodied receiver like Keon Coleman who can go out there and make plays. I think he would be a great addition to their offense. Then at number 31, I have the San Francisco 49ers taking Byron Murphy II, a defensive tackle out of Texas. With Murphy going here at 31, that would be a great value pick, maybe the best of this entire mock draft with him going 31st overall. Adding to a defensive line that got rid of some guys this offseason. Obviously, Chase Young left in free agency, and then they also got rid of longtime defensive tackle Eric Armstead. So maybe adding in Byron Murphy could be a missing piece for them on their defensive line. And then the last pick of this mock with the 32nd overall pick, I have the Kansas City Chiefs adding to their wide receiver room, which I do still think they need another receiver just like the Ravens, and maybe even the Niners. The Niners could be in the market for a receiver if they do get rid of Brandon Ayuk. I have the Chiefs taking Xavier Worthy here, a wide receiver out of Texas. He had a very good combine, and I don't really value the combine as much as most people do. There are players that succeed at the combine every year that do better than everybody else, but at the end of the day, just your athleticism and your speed doesn't really always translate to being a great player in the NFL. One guy that did very well at the combine, though, that probably would translate in the NFL is Xavier Worthy. Very good speed and acceleration, ran a 4.21 40-yard dash, the best ever at the combine. Would not be surprised to see them take him at 32 overall. The Chiefs are looking to add more speed to their offense. Getting a guy like Xavier Worthy would definitely add a home run hitting ability to their offense like they had when they had Tyreek Hill. Which I'm not saying he's Tyreek Hill, but he has the speed and acceleration to be a very dangerous wide receiver like Tyreek Hill was with Patrick Mahomes. We know how good Patrick Mahomes is when he has a receiver that can create separation. This kid can do that each and every route, which is a skill that you need in today's NFL. You need a guy that has speed that can create separation. So now I'm going to move on to my last mock draft. This one I made today, so my mock 8.0, which is something I just made just about an hour ago now First overall pick stays the same. Caleb Williams going to the Bears. Don't really think they're going to think too much about this pick here. I know Jayden Daniels was a guy that was talked about at one point to go number one overall. It seems like Caleb Williams is the lock for number one. I think Jayden Daniels is a better quarterback than Williams, but at the end of the day, Williams does go number one overall. At number two, we have Drake May going to the Washington Commanders. At number three, I have the Patriots taking J.J. McCarthy. I think he ends up being the guy for the Patriots at number three overall. I think a lot of guys in that building are a fan of him from what I hear. And I think based on what they're looking for, a guy that's tough, which J.J. McCarthy is a tough quarterback. He took some hits this past year at Michigan. They're looking for a winner, I'm sure, as well, which J.J. McCarthy was a winner at each level, high school, college, and we'll see what he does in the NFL. I'm not as high on him as most people. I don't really see first-round talent, at least top 15, top 20 talent when I watch him play. But I do think the Patriots like what they see from him. He's a tough kid that obviously has won at each level, and at the same time has a good arm, but he only throws at one speed. That's what I heard today on the radio, and I honestly agreed with that opinion. He only throws at one speed. He just throws a fastball every single time he throws. Doesn't really have the soft touch in the plays that I saw from him. But at the end of the day, I think the Patriots go out and take him with the third overall pick. At number four, I have Marvin Harrison Jr. going to the Cardinals. At number five, this is an interesting point. Jayden Daniels would be falling all the way to the fifth pick, and I would have the Raiders jumping from 13 to number 5 with their divisional rival, the Chargers, and I would have the Raiders taking Jayden Daniels, quarterback out of LSU. As I've noted now probably 4 or 5 times in this episode, I think the Raiders are going to be very aggressive to try to find their quarterback of the future. I think they're going to take a shot at Jayden Daniels or take a shot at a guy like Michael Penix. I think Daniels could be the guy if he falls to number 5, and that's what happened here in this mock. At number 6, I have the Bears trading up with the New York Giants. So the Giants will be trading from number 6 down to number 9, and the Bears will be jumping from 9 to 6. And I would have the Bears taking Malik Nabers, wide receiver out of LSU. The Bears have a lot of draft picks to work with here, and the Giants at the end of the day would probably be happy with any of those 3 receivers, whether it's Odunze, Harrison, or Nabers. They would have a chance here at Nabers, but I think they trade down, maybe add a second-round pick in the future or some other picks as well. And they would go down to number 9, and that's where they'd get Odunze in this mock. And then the Bears would be taking Nabers, who I think they would love to pair with Caleb Williams. It seems like Williams and Nabers are friends, so I think they would be psyched to trade up and try to get him at number 6 overall. At number 7, I have Terrion Arnold, a cornerback out of Alabama, going to the Tennessee Titans. A little bit of a surprise there. I know they did add L'Jarius Sneed in the offseason, but I think Terrion Arnold is probably the safest cornerback pick in this year's draft. And I think the Titans could be leaning that way maybe. I know I've already given them a lot of offensive linemen, but I want to mix things up a little bit. So I had them taking Terrion Arnold out of Alabama. At number 8, I have Dallas Turner going to the Falcons. So I've had him going there in a good amount of mock drafts to this point. At number 9, I have the New York Giants trading down from number 6 to number 9 with the Bears. And the Giants would be taking Rome Odunze out of Washington at number 9. I would be psyched with that if the Giants could add another pick or 2 by trading down from 6 to 9 with the Bears. And then they still get their guy in Odunze. I would be a big, big fan of that. At number 10, I have the Broncos trading up to the 10th overall pick with the New York Jets, and I have them taking Michael Penix Jr., a quarterback out of Washington. I know they traded for Zach Wilson, like I've already noted, but I don't think that means they're not going to go out and try to get a quarterback in this year's draft. In this case, Penix falls to number 10. I know a lot of people aren't as high on Penix because of the injuries, and they also think lefty quarterbacks are not going to translate well, and they also see 24 years old as a worry. But Michael Penix is an absolute grinder. That's a kid you want running your offense. The composure, the poise in the pocket, the strong arm, the adversity he's had to go through. He is a tough kid. He can take hits. I know that offensive line was great in Washington, but he still took some hits, and I think his mobility is honestly underrated. He's not going to be running for 45, 50, 60 yards a game. He's not Jayden Daniels, but he is mobile enough to get outside the pocket and still make throws. I know his numbers outside the pocket weren't that great, but I still think he can do so in the NFL. He can still at least move around in the pocket a little bit and maybe step up and make a big-time throw. His arm is NFL ready. I think he's the most NFL ready prospect of any of these quarterbacks in the draft. So I have the Broncos jumping up and taking him at number 10. And then at number 11, I have the Minnesota Vikings taking Quinyon Mitchell, cornerback out of Toledo. At this point, they would probably just take best player available. They're not going to take Brock Bowers here. Maybe they could take Joe Alt. I guess you never know. But I think Quinyon Mitchell probably makes more sense since their secondary has been an issue over the last couple of years. Then at number 12, I would have the Jets taking Joe Alt, a tackle out of Notre Dame. I had the Jets trading down in this situation with the Denver Broncos. So the Broncos jump from 12 to 10 to take Penix. And then the Jets would be taking Joe Alt with the 12th overall pick. Then at number 13, the Chargers, who traded down from number 5 to 13 with the Raiders, would be taking Brock Bowers out of Georgia. So they'd be getting another weapon there to help Justin Herbert. Then at number 14, I have the Saints taking Jared Verse, an edge rusher out of Florida State. Last year in the first round, they took a defensive lineman in Brian Brzee out of Clemson. So the second year in a row, they'd be taking a defensive lineman, this time being Jared Verse out of Florida State. Cam Jordan is getting up there in age, so I do think adding a defensive lineman could be smart for them. Jared Verse does have the ability to be a great pass rusher in the NFL. We'll see how he pans out, but he does have the size and the build you want for an NFL pass rusher. Then at number 15, I have the Colts taking an edge rusher as well, taking Laiatu Latu out of UCLA. At number 16, I have the Bengals jumping from 18 to 16. I have them taking Olu Fashanu here, trading up with the Seattle Seahawks. I have the Bengals taking a starting tackle in Fashanu, who falls all the way to 16 in this mock draft. Then at number 17, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars taking Johnny Newton, a defensive tackle out of Illinois. That's definitely a need for them, is a little bit of help on the defensive line. At number 18, I have the Seattle Seahawks falling from 16 to 18, trading down with the Bengals, and I have the Seahawks taking Byron Murphy II, a defensive tackle out of Texas. At number 19, I have the LA Rams making an interesting pick here, taking Bo Nix, quarterback out of Oregon. I think they might be looking for their quarterback of the future if Matt Stafford doesn't stay around too much longer. I think he's 36 years old, so he is getting a little bit up there in age. We'll see how much more he plays, but maybe they add Bo Nix and he sits behind Stafford for a year or two. Then at number 20, I have the Steelers taking Troy Fautanu, a tackle out of Washington that I've already talked a good amount about. I think I've been pretty consistent. The Steelers looking at a tackle in this year's draft, I think is the best overall pick in the first round for them, but we'll see how the board shakes out. Maybe they take another guy if there's a better player available. Then at number 21, I have a surprise pick. The Dolphins somehow get Talizi Fuaga, tackle out of Oregon State. I have him falling all the way to 21. He could still go as high as top 10, but somehow, someway in this mock draft, he fell all the way to 21. Guys fall down draft boards every single year where you expect him to be a top 10 pick, and somehow, someway, the way the board shakes out or the way GMs grade guys, they do fall in the draft. So in this mock draft here, I have Fuaga falling all the way to 21 to the Miami Dolphins. With Teron Armstead getting up there in age, I would not be surprised to see them go out and add another tackle, so that could be a good pick for them. Then at number 22, I have the Eagles taking a defensive lineman, which I think is the pick in 3 of my 4 mock drafts in this episode. I think I have them taking a defensive lineman in 3 of those picks, and I have them taking Chop Robinson, which is the same pick as I had them taking in my 7.1 mock. I think it makes sense for them to go out and add to their defensive line. Chop Robinson could definitely help their pass rush. At number 23, I have Brian Thomas Jr. going to the Minnesota Vikings. So they add another LSU receiver to pair up with Justin Jefferson and maybe potentially for Sam Darnold if he is their starting quarterback this year. We'll see what they do with their 11th and 23rd overall picks. I know they acquired that 23rd overall pick with the hopes of maybe trying to trade up to get a quarterback, but in this mock draft, with the way things shake out, I have Jaden Daniels being picked 5th overall and the Raiders jumping up to get him. And then I also have the Broncos jumping them and taking Michael Penix with the 10th overall pick. So with this pick here at 23, maybe they take best player available, and I have them adding another receiver here to pair up with Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. Then at number 24, I have the Bills jumping up here from 28. I have them jumping up to 24, and I have them taking A.D. Mitchell, a wide receiver out of Texas, which wide receiver is definitely a need for them now in the offseason. Josh Allen definitely needs a little bit more help in the receiving room. So I would not be surprised to see A.D. Mitchell be their pick at 24 if they were to trade up, or 28 if they stay still. Then at number 25, I have the Green Bay Packers taking Nate Wiggins, a cornerback out of Clemson, which this is the second time now in my last 4 mock drafts in this episode that I have them taking a defensive back, which is definitely somewhat of a need for them. I know they have Jair Alexander, but they still could add another cornerback opposite of him, so Nate Wiggins could be that guy. They do have Jeff Hafley as their defensive coordinator now, so he'd probably have to agree on whatever guy they do draft with that pick if they were to go with the defensive back, but I think Nate Wiggins could definitely be the guy they go there. At number 26, I have the Bucs taking Keon Coleman, a wide receiver out of Florida State. As I've already noted, I think Chris Godwin's time in Tampa Bay will be done after the season. Maybe there's a chance they trade him in the offseason, or maybe they trade him midway through next season. But I do think they go out and add a receiver in the first round. I have them taking Keon Coleman, who could definitely be a good weapon there, opposite of Mike Evans for Baker Mayfield. Then at number 27, I have the Saints trading back in, which with the 14th overall pick, I have them taking Jared Verse. And then with the 27th overall pick, I have them trading up from their number 45 pick, which is their second round pick. I have them jumping up from 45 to 27 back into the first round to take J.C. Latham, a tackle out of Alabama that would somehow fall to number 27 in this mock. As I've already noted, I'm not as high on J.C. Latham as most. I think his footwork could still use a little bit of work from what I saw in that game against Michigan, but I do think the Saints want to add to that offensive line. Maybe they trade back in and try to address that need there at 27. So I have them taking Latham there, and I have the Cardinals trading down from 27 down to 45, but they would probably get a good package there for the Saints to trade back in and get him. So the Cardinals are still building for the future, so maybe they're just trying to add more draft picks to try to rebuild with. Then at number 28, I have the Dallas Cowboys, which I have them trading down from 24 to 28. I have them taking Jackson Powers-Johnson here with the 28th overall pick. A versatile center, like I've already noted, that can play multiple positions on the offensive line. Would not be surprised to see them add to their offensive line with this pick. It seems like they were always an offensive line factory in the draft. They've only taken one offensive lineman in the first round since 2015, and that was Tyler Smith in 2022, a tackle out of Tulsa. So this would be their first time in a while taking an offensive lineman in the first round besides Tyler Smith. This would be their first time taking a center in the first round since Travis Frederick, their first-round pick in 2013, who was a three-time All-Pro at the center position for them. So maybe they go out and try to address that need and find another potential gem. We'll see how things work out in Jackson Powers-Johnson, who I think would be a good add for them. He had a very good year for Oregon. Was a big part of their success the last couple of years on offense. And obviously the Cowboys need help on the line. Then at number 29, I have the Detroit Lions taking Cooper DeJean, safety out of Iowa. Like I've already noted, I think secondary is probably where they go with this pick, maybe defensive line, but I think secondary makes most sense here. So I have them taking Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. Then at number 30, I have the Ravens making an interesting pick here, taking Amarius Mims, a tackle out of Georgia. Like I've already noted, there were a lot of question marks about him, only making 8 starts in his career at Georgia. But the size is there, obviously, and the ceilings, obviously, there to potentially be the best tackle in the draft. He is a project. He may not completely work out right away. You're probably going to have to work with him to try to make things work out. So that's why he's a little bit more of a risky pick, only making 8 career starts. But the Ravens are in a position, just like the Chiefs, where they can just draft a guy and take a big risk on whatever prospect they want because they're good enough. They don't really have that many holes to try to figure out. So I do know they did lose some on the defense in this offseason, did lose some on the defensive line in the linebacker position. So maybe that's something they could address as well. But in most of my mock drafts, I have them taking either a wide receiver or an offensive lineman. Then at number 31, I have the San Francisco 49ers taking Xavier Worthy, wide receiver out of Texas. Like I've already noted, a 4.21 40-yard dash, the best ever at the Combine. I think there's a potential chance they do go out and trade Brandon Ayuk, and I think Worthy could be their replacement. I know they don't want to pay Ayuk, and obviously Deebo Samuel had his contract issues over the past couple of years as well. I think they're probably getting a little bit frustrated with that. I think they go out and get a rookie receiver in this year's draft and move on from Ayuk. I know the Bengals are upset with the T. Higgins situation. They don't really want to pay him, and I know Higgins is upset, and Ayuk's upset at the end of the day. I know he said he doesn't want to be traded, but we'll see how things work out in the draft. You never really can believe too many reports nowadays, especially when you're this close to the NFL draft. There's just so many smoke screens, but I do believe the Niners are at least looking into trading Ayuk and maybe drafting a receiver with the 31st overall pick. Then at number 32, to close out this mock draft, I have the Chiefs taking Kool-Aid McKinstry, a cornerback out of Alabama. Somehow, some way, he falls all the way to 32 in this mock, and they would get their potential replacement for L'Jarius Sneed there at the end of the first round. So there's a breakdown of my 7.0 mock, my 7.1 mock, my 7.2 mock, and my 8.0 mock. I will give one more mock draft tomorrow before the NFL draft, so that will be my 8.1 mock. I will break down tomorrow right before the draft, maybe a couple hours before, maybe in the morning if I have the time, but if not, maybe a couple hours before the draft, I'll give one last updated mock. I always enjoy doing these mock drafts. I know I'll probably be wrong with a good amount of these predictions. Nobody's ever going to get a lot of these plays right, whether you're predicting a guy to be a potential All-Pro, you're predicting a guy to be a bust. No one's ever going to get all of these things right. That's the beauty of the NFL draft. Everything is in question. Nobody really knows how a play is going to do and how a play is going to pan out when they get to the NFL. But I do enjoy doing these. Hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to this. Thank you, as always, for taking the time to listen. Much appreciated. I hope you guys have a good one. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.